Well, welcome everybody. I am here with David Brown. He is the president and CEO of the Omaha Chamber. David, thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here, as always. Good to see you.
As part of our 100th episode, I just thought it would be appropriate. Let's talk about the city, kind of what's going on. But also, you've been at the Chamber since 2003?
Long time, yep.
Long time. So what brought you? Let's just a little history. What brought you here?
Well, I'm from the Midwest originally, Detroit area. I guess Michiganders consider themselves still a part of the Midwest, even though Nebraskans might not think of Michigan that way. But my wife and I are both from Michigan, worked in Indiana for a while, and then took a stint down in South Carolina. And while we loved it there, we had a 10-year-old at the time, decided we wanted to get him into an area that was more focused on good public schools and get back to the Midwest because we were kind of craving getting back into our home roots, if you will. And so we were fortunate that the Omaha Chamber job was open. And I threw my hat in the ring at the very last moment possible, and was fortunate enough to make my way through the interview process and get the position. So timing, I suppose, luck, good fortune, all that kind of good stuff. They had a role to play in me getting here.
Yeah. Well, the Omaha community has certainly changed a lot since 2003.
It has.
It's grown considerably. So I just wanted to kind of take a trip down memory lane and, what are some of your more memorable events that have happened, whether they're chamber related or not, as you've been here?
I've been continually impressed with Omaha. Just sort of doesn't sit still. There's this expectation that there's always what's next. And when I got here, the first week I was here, they were doing the ribbon cutting for what was then the Quest Center. The Hilton Omaha had just opened. Gallup had opened up about 6 months earlier than that. And so if you think about what we've seen in the riverfront area and NoDo since then, it's been an ongoing, continual process of redevelopment. And really, we've seen that all across Omaha, from Midtown Crossing to Exarban Village to everything from 120th West, which frankly was very little development out there when I first got here, and it's continued to grow all the way out well past 204th Street now. So I think that the continued growth of the community has been pretty remarkable. I think the commitment that was made by city fathers to put a lot of our cultural and sports amenities in downtown brought the ability for downtown to have new life from what had really happened in the 80s when a lot of businesses sort of deserted downtowns across the country. Omaha had that happen too. But I think with corporate investments by the likes of the World Herald and Union Pacific and First National and ConAgra and fill in the blanks of all the companies that invested from the early 90s on. And then the cultural amenities and sports amenities that were put there breathed new life into downtown, which brought more energy and more ability to do more projects across the city. So it's been just fun to see Omaha go vertical and to see more parts of Omaha, see kind of villages pop up in the middle of a city like Midtown Crossing and Exarban Village that I probably wouldn't have seen in prior decades. So we've been fortunate to be here during all of that.
Yeah. It's certainly been an amazing thing to watch, and also just such a great community, and just really proud to be a part of it, and everything going on. Yeah. So I want to ask you, so the Chamber is one of the largest, most highly accredited chambers in the nation, the Omaha Chamber.
Yeah. Yep.
Why is that?
I'd like to say it's because I'm here, but that's not the case. We have a business community in Omaha that, as you know from the work that you do, is truly remarkable. They have high expectations of themselves and high expectations of the community. And we've been fortunate at the Chamber to be the place where a lot of the business focus has been placed in areas of development, international work, public policy, infrastructure, et cetera. And so the business community keeps giving us more and more jobs to do and the resources to get those done. And then what's really unique about Omaha is that these leaders don't just say, it's the chamber's job to do this, we're going to go let them do it. No, no, no. These leaders serve on our boards, they serve on our executive committee, they take time, energy to really commit and get projects done. So whether it's with us or with United Way or the Boy Scouts or the Urban League, just fill in the blank. There are corporate engagers here that you will not see engaged in other communities. And so the willingness for a CEO of a Fortune 500 company to sit across the table from his or her peers and say, let's get this done, and then roll up their sleeves and make it happen, adds even more credibility to the programs and policies and programs that the chamber is engaged with. So it helps us build credibility. So we have a larger number of members than you might expect for a community of our size. The accreditation process is really about running the chamber like a business.
Sure.
So we pay a lot of attention to P&L, just like you do. We worry about revenue and expenses. We want to make sure we have all the structures and systems in place to make it happen. And then we ask the U.S. Chamber to come in and assess whether or not we've done all that stuff right. And so being a 5-star accredited chamber means that we're one of only 1% of the 7,000 chambers in the country that have that 5-star accreditation.
Yeah.
So, we try and make sure that not only do we think we're doing a good job, but then have somebody come in and measure it from the external and tell us whether or not we're doing the things right that we need to do.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I have to say congratulations, because it does take leadership, and, your involvement paves the way for everybody being involved. So you are definitely a piece of the puzzle when it comes to that.
Thank you. I will accept the piece of the puzzle analogy. I think that does work. But you got to have all the other pieces of the puzzle come together and to form that cohesive picture. And I think Omaha is one of the best in the world at making those kind of things happen. Yeah,
I would agree. So let's talk a little bit. You have a new initiative called Code that what are we in just a few months of this kind of being developed?
Well, actually, it has been very vocal and very visible for the last few months.
Okay.
But actually, it started in 2017.
Oh, okay.
We started our Omaha 2040 process, which is the vision for what could Omaha be by 2040. Okay. And part of that was a recognition that demographically, Omaha and Nebraska were going to be changing dramatically over the next 20 years. In that we are now about 25% ethnically diverse as a population, and the studies all tell us that by 2040 we'll be majority non-white in this community. Mm-hmm. So we asked ourselves, are we ready for that? And how can we be helpful in using that shift from a demographic perspective to a competitive advantage for our community? What if Omaha could become one of the most inclusive cities in America? What if we use that as a competitive advantage for keeping people here, attracting people here, and building the talent base that we need for our companies and for our community? And so we embarked upon a process after 2040 was completed to build our new 5-year strategy called Prosper Omaha 2.0, which basically said over the next 5 years, let's build a series of first steps towards accomplishing that 2040 vision. And one of those first steps was building the Code Council, which stands for our commitment to opportunities for diversity and equity. Mm-hmm. And so we put in place a staffer and a committee whose job really was to help companies become more adept at hiring diverse personnel and to build inclusive cultures in our companies so that once you've hired that diverse personnel, they stay.
Sure.
And then to start looking at the community as well and to say what kind of cultural amenities we need to have in our community to make sure that the community is also inclusive once these individuals left the office and went back to their neighborhoods, were their neighborhoods also inclusive places. So we started engaging in this work really back in 2017 and 18. And then the spring came around and the civil unrest that we saw across the country and that we've also seen here seemed to coincide really well with the mission of our Code Committee. Mm-hmm. And from a timing perspective, we had a group that we actually created last fall called CEOs for Code, which were a collection of companies who had signed a pledge that said they would work hard at becoming more diverse and inclusive at their business place. And we had a meeting scheduled for a Wednesday in June, and it just happened to be the Wednesday after the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. And I think we had 40 companies originally signed up for that meeting. And by that Wednesday, we had 150 companies signed up for the meeting. As a result of that meeting, we then created the We Will Pledge, which you've probably seen, which was a collection now of more than 270 companies who have said, you know what, we can do this in Omaha. We can make Omaha the most inclusive community in the country, and we can abolish racism and sexism from the face of the Omaha landscape if we're really focused on it. And the business community was willing to take a leadership role in partnership with organizations that have been doing this work for many, 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 many years. So that's why you've seen more and more about code over the past several months, because timing was such that it was time for it to sort of do more work and be more aggressive and more intensive about its purpose.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information about code on the chamber website. I took the pledge, and we're actually doing a special section on it in the October issue. It's going to be our cover story, but yeah, so encourage people to go to the website, the chamber website, to get more involved.
If you go to omahachamber.org and you type in We Will, or type in code, type in We Rise, all of those will get you to a place where you can see what we're doing in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space.
Yeah, because We Rise, was that the initiative that kind of came from COVID-19? Okay, so let's talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about that as well.
So March rolled around, and we were all sort of moving along as though 2020 was going to be this remarkable economic
banner year.
We had visions of grandeur with all of the big events that were going to happen here this year, and just really going to be a marvelous year. And then, of course, COVID happened. And we, like a lot of other businesses, in the middle of March, went remote. And we remain remote even today. But the interesting part of this is that our company started asking us questions that we didn't have answers to. So what can we do to reopen our business? What government regulations do we have to fulfill in order to make sure we're doing it not only legally, but safely for our customers and for our employees? Where's good information on the nature of the disease so that we can make good health-informed decisions about getting our businesses back open and treating our employees well? And what are we allowed to do? At what point does the governor and the mayor have choices that they're making for us? And so we are limited on what we can do. So we created a document called We Rise, which was part one of an economic recovery strategy. You can find that on our website again. And it's a great primer on what you must do, what you're allowed to do, what choices you can make, and where you can get the information that you need to make all the decisions necessary to get your business back open, get your people back to work, and treat your customers safely. Once we got that document done, we immediately started pivoting to, okay, this economic recession is no fun. We want to get to a point where we're not just entering recovery, but sprinting into recovery. So what do we have to do to accelerate economic recovery here? So we created 6 task forces. That's called our Thrive 2020 task force. And we had a task force on small business, economic growth, public policy, diversity, equity, and inclusion, talent, and entrepreneurship. And put council members together and said, I want you to create for us, actually Mindy Simon and Tim Burke, who are sort of the chairs of this thing, and James Blackledge from Mutual said, let's see if we can't identify those items that can help us accelerate into recovery rather than trudge into recovery. And so those task forces have been meeting, and the executive committee has seen some of their recommendations and raised some money to fund some of those things. And so I would imagine in the very near future, we'll be a lot more public about what those things are, but many of them are already ongoing, and many of them are making a difference already and kind of clearing the path so that we can be out there and growing the economy again faster than we might see in other places.
And that is so important. I mean, there are a lot of places to find out the health, the health issues and the do's and don'ts for health, but business, not so much. And it's incredibly valuable.
We've been, again, blessed with the fact that we have University of Nebraska Medical Center, Global Center for Health Security in this market. They're a world leader in helping with this pandemic, and they've given us, as a community and as business owners, remarkable resources that we can use to make really good, informed decisions for our employees. And now it's up to us as business leaders to say, okay, now it's our turn.
Yeah.
Now that we're informed, and now we know what we can do, we need to do it. And so how do we get out of each other's way, get that optimism back, start thinking about what Omaha really can be as a result of this, and turn the tables on the pandemic. It's not gone yet, but we're managing it. And
Right.
if we do it right, if we do those three things that Dr. Gold likes to talk about, wear a mask, wash your hands, stay socially distanced. If we do those things, we can still run our businesses. We can still be successful running our businesses with those. But if we do those things, we can actually tamp down the spread of the virus, and we can be back to whatever normal is going to look like next a lot sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Well, in the last minute or so, I think you might have answered this, but I'll ask it, just a few other thoughts about the future for the Omaha community.
It is really strong. Even throughout this pandemic, we've seen companies adding employees. We've seen construction coming out of the ground. We've seen remarkable new projects announced. I know I'm paid to be optimistic, so you'd expect me to give this all flowery kind of thing. But in reality, it's true. All you have to do is get in your car and drive around and see all this great stuff that's happening, and you can see that Omaha has a great future.
Yeah.
In large measure, that's because of our people, and it's because of this never die attitude. But an awful lot of it is just the fact that, Nebraska is this remarkable place. It's got remarkable leadership and remarkable people, and we got to take advantage of that while we can. So I think the next few years are going to be Omaha's years, and we'll come out of this with flying colors and do really well as we move into the next decade.
Absolutely. And I will say optimism and looking at what else is possible, that is what creates the future. Mm-hmm. Looking at things in a negative light, that does not create a future that we want to live in. So
we all fall down on that every now and then, right? Something happens and you get, woe is me, woe is me. But as quick as we can pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and just start doing things again, the sooner we'll start realizing that we've conquered this thing, and it's time to move on and conquer some new challenges.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect ending to this wonderful conversation, David. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for asking me. I appreciate it. Congratulations on your 100th show. That's terrific.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to believe, and looking forward to working with you more in the future. So we'll hopefully see each other soon.
I'm sure we will. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks.